Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I am back with another emergency card kit for you. Today we have a rewind and we're going to do some refreshed sentiments from some older kits. If you're new to my channel, an emergency card is one like this. We make the card ahead of time, but we leave the sentiment off. That way, when an occasion arises, we can choose the card that best fits the recipient, but the sentiment that best fits the occasion. For the past 2 years, I've been releasing free sentiments every month in 2 identical sizes, so I can mix and match from tons of different sentiment options. Today, we're going to make 3 pop-up cards, but this one will use the original style sentiment, okay? So we have some rectangles and circles that are always the same size, and this one uses one on the outside and another on the inside. For our other 2 cards, we'll use the refreshed rewind kit that has some larger format sentiments and has some pattern paper. I can't wait to show you all 3 of these cards. They all have a pop-up on the inside, but certainly you could just use the card layouts as inspiration. So let's take a look. So there are 7 new pages in this kit rewind. I have 6 pages of sentiments and 1 page of digital paper. This first page goes back to kit 32. It was a masculine card kit from last spring. And we have, like a good whiskey, you get better with age. Is it weird being the same age as old people? Add +1 to your wisdom modifier. You've successfully survived a full orbit of your local star. Happy birthday, nerd. I love your big brain. These sentiments are designed to be cut out with a 2.5-inch circle. You could probably go a little smaller if you wanted to. The printed circle is slightly larger, but it's there to help you get everything centered. Then we have 2 more pages of sentiments that come from a different kit. Kit 34 was Adulting Awards and Retirement Sentiments. And so some of these were in the original kit and some of these are additions to that kit. World's Okayest Engineer, World's Okayest Brother, World's Okayest Fisherman, Golfer, Mechanic, and Husband. And then a few more on this page, World's Okayest Chef, Sister, Crafter, Gamer, Coworker, and Wife. I couldn't make World's Okayest Husband without also making World's Okayest Wife, but since my husband has made maybe 1 card ever, I think I'm probably not in danger of receiving that card. Next, we have some digital paper. These print ever so slightly larger than A2. So here's a card base just for scale and sizing. We're going to use both of these today. These get downloaded as a PDF and then I just print them out and I can use them on any of my card projects. The 3 pages of circle sentiments and then the digital paper are a free download. I will link in the description box below to my Patreon post that has the download, okay? It is absolutely free. I have a free membership in Patreon. If all of that sounds new to you, I will also link to my tutorial where I sort of launched my Patreon and taught everybody all about it, how the free membership works. But there's tons of freebies over there. So 4 pages completely free. The next 3 pages are the same sentiments and the same sizes, but I've removed that circle. These 3 pages are available to any paid member. So there's 4 paid membership tiers. The first one is $2. So you'll be able to download all of the masculine sentiments from the first page and then the 2 pages of World's Okayest Sentiments. I will also include for any of those paid members a PNG file of each of these 3 pages that has a transparent background. So you can use these like digital stamps on any of your projects. They also import really well into Silhouette Studio or Cricut Design Space if you want to bubble cut them or if you want to turn them into stickers. If you're interested in seeing these turned into stickers, I will be using the World's Okayest Engineer and making a bunch of stickers for my husband. So I certainly could show you that process if you're interested. All right, let's make some cards. So here's the first one. And we have this great stencil detail, and then it's going to pop up with an inside sub-sentiment. We're going to do a little stenciling to start with. This is an old stencil of the month set from Spellbinders. It's called Squared Away. And honestly, I filmed this the month that it came out. I think it came out in November. I'll link it below if it's still available. But I love a geometric pattern for a masculine card, and this makes the best pattern paper. So I've gone through the first layer of the stencil with Distress Oxide, and I really like a domed foam blender for my oxides. And that way I have dedicated blenders for those. I don't have enough brushes for all my oxides. Then this is In the Navy by Gina K, and it's a dye ink, but it's dark enough that it's going to show up on that craft cardstock. This is a 5-piece stencil set that will cover every lick of space on that A2 panel, but I could only find 4 of my 5 stencils. So instead of saying, oh, well, I can't use this set, I decided to start with a colored cardstock. So I have some craft cardstock. It's Toffee from Tailored Expressions. It's my very favorite. And then here I'm using a dark brown ink. I think this is Mocha. Yep, we have Mocha, and I have just gone all over the top of that. I really love when I don't have to worry about blending, right? This is just something I can do and put on a book or some music, sing along, and all of a sudden I'm like crafting and not worrying about anything. I'm coming through my 4th layer of my stencil with some Brilliant Gold pigment ink, just for that little pop of shine. Just because it's a masculine card doesn't mean it can't have shine or texture. And so I really, really love something metallic here as an extra pop of added interest. I have an A2 panel of dark brown cardstock that I'll put on the front of my card. I've cut something out of the middle that we'll use later. No one's going to see that. And then I cut this panel down just a little smaller than A2. So we have 4 by 5 1/4, and it'll give me that dark brown border all the way around the outside edge. I feel like that really just gives it an extra added interest when otherwise this is a very simple card. I have a piece of pearlescent gold cardstock that's 2.5 by 1.5 inches. This is my standard mat size for a rectangle emergency sentiment, and it will fit all of the rectangle sentiments from all of the kits. They come like this, and there are tick marks on the top and bottom, and I'm cutting through, lining up those tick marks on the blade of my trimmer, but I'm not going all the way through the top. I'm keeping that header intact because you'll notice that there are tick marks on the side as well. This let me, as I'm designing it, butt all of those rectangles up against each other so we don't have to cut quite so much. So here I've rotated, everything's attached at the top of the page, but as I connect the next set of tick marks, everything cuts out beautifully. So this is the original kit 32, and it has tons of masculine sentiments. I like to add these with removable adhesive, so if I change my mind later and don't want something quite so sassy, I can always change it up. On the inside, we're going to add a pop-up mechanism. This is a die set that I designed for Trinity Stamps. It's called Emergency Card Essentials #2. They were out of stock for quite a while there, but they are back in stock, both at Trinity Stamps and at scrapbook.com. And so I have taken that hexagon and I've just chopped the top off of it. So now it looks like a flag and an arrow pointing down, almost like a marker on a map, and I love that. I have added that same matte layer out of that shimmer gold cardstock, and then we'll work on our pop-up mechanism. So it is a rectangle and there are 3 score lines, and you're gonna fold on all of those score lines as mountain folds, okay? So I like to stick my thumb right on in there and soften that up, and then I can fold it so they're all going the same direction. I'm being careful here. I want to make sure that the 2 triangles that line up on that top side are going to line up all the way at the top, and that where they meet on the back, they're not overlapping. Okay, if they are, just use your bone folder and your fingers to manipulate the paper so that they're not overlapping. I'm going to tuck my 2 little triangles to the back and add glue only to those 2 triangles. I'll use my index finger to hold those back behind there, and I am lining up the score line of my mechanism with the score line in the center of my card. And while it's still wet, I try to close it. If it pops off, it means something wasn't straight. Let it pop off. That's really important. If you force it, it's not going to open and close very well, and you might glue your card shut. So I have decided that to keep things as simple as possible, I'm just going to trim the tiniest little wedge off of both of those glue triangles. And that gives me extra wiggle room. So I'm going to add my glue again, line up the center score lines, and while the glue is still wet, I will go to close it and it will sort of wiggle itself into place. This one worked beautifully. You can technically put it all the way at the top of the card, but I like to give myself just a little sliver of space so that everything else fits in there more easily. I'm going to add glue to one of the remaining triangles. I'm making sure not to go across that center score line, and then I'll put the bottom of the hexagon right on top of it. And then that will fold shut and hide entirely inside the card. It's a really simple mechanism. You can use it to pop up all kinds of things. So you never thought you'd be a grumpy old man, but here you are, killing it. That, my friends, is card number 1. For card number 2, we are going to use this fun pop-up mechanism from Karen Bernstein and a stamp set I've been dying to use. So this is the Fun Friends number 2. This is a craft roulette stamp set. It is only available through their website. I will link it for you. I am so excited to meet Steven, Mr. Producer at Paper Ganza, because I want to know if he looks like the stamp. The other stamp set, which I think is Fun Friends number 1, looks like Mary. So it has to, right? Let me know what you think. I don't usually show my coloring in videos because it takes me a long time and I have to find my glasses. But these are so sketchy and simple. I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do just some really quick coloring and I could show you kind of what my process looks like. So I went all over the face and neck with Y120 and Y130 with my Ohuhu alcohol markers. If you're new to alcohol marker coloring, these are really affordable markers. And quite frankly, I like the tip on these better than Copic tips and better than the Olo tips. I think they're just a little finer and I can get into the details a little bit better. It's really helpful for something like this shirt. I went over the entire thing in BG3, but then I'm using my B110 and just going over the stripes and crisscrossing to make a sort of plaid pattern. And my Olos have a much thicker tip. There are many benefits to Olos and I understand why people like them. But for me, and I consider myself a beginner, this is a little bit easier. One of the few places that I really tried to break out what skills I have was on the hair. I wanted there to be a little bit of movement there. So I did go and just do some flicking motions to add color to his hair. I used E120, E130, and E430. And then I'm adding in green for our bowl of popcorn, GY7 and GY4, and just my very lightest yellow, Y030, to dot on some butter for that popcorn. When I stamped the images originally, I used Memento Tuxedo Black because it's really user-friendly and alcohol marker-friendly. It dries very quickly and won't smear when you're coloring, but it's not a super dark, crisp black. And so I like to stamp over the top of it again with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and that just really darkens up those lines and makes everything a little bit crisper. There are dies available and I use them to cut out my little images, and then I'm going to grab some background paper. This is from the Saskatoon level of the kit from kit 58, but you could use the gray paper that comes in today's kit. And I'm cutting that down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I have a colored card base. I don't do that very often, but because of the pop-up mechanism and the window we're going to cut into it, this is going to work best. So I'm going to use my 2 1/4 inch square die to cut out Happy Birthday, Nerd. And then I will grab my 2 1/2 inch square die to cut out a matte layer for that. And I'll just go ahead and glue those together. This is going to be glued to the pop-up mechanism, so there isn't a great way to create a removable sentiment here. Though certainly if I use the same size square, I could just glue a new sentiment on top of this one later on. I am gluing my pattern paper to the front of my card. If I had it to do over, I think I would wait. I would just temporarily adhere it. But I want to figure out my layout because I want to create a window in the front so that you see that sentiment both from the front and from the inside. We're using a Karen Bernstein die set. It's called the Katherine Label Pop-Up. And even in like the intro video where she shows you how to use the die set, she creates a window in the front of her card. And so if you want a second look at how to do this or another way to do this, you certainly can check out that video. She does a great job of teaching it. I am going to tape that 2 1/4 inch square to my card base and run it through my machine. And then there is one die in that set that is the actual mechanism. The rest of it I'm not using. I have one I've cut in white, and I've used a pencil to mark all of the score lines. They are all mountain folds, really, really simple. But I like to tuck my finger into that score line to fold it back the wrong way, just to find the score line and then fold the mountain. I learned that from Katherine because she's brilliant and amazing and my crafty hero. On the white piece, I highlighted all the places where I needed double-sided adhesive. I added that to my mechanism. And then up at the top there, you can see there's a little tab with angled cuts taken out of it. So we're going to start with that. There's a score line right under the tab. Well, we want to fold not on the first, but the second score line. Then with that facing us, I will remove the backer paper just for the short tab. And I will fold on the score line that's furthest to the top and fold that flat down on top of it. Okay, so it should fold completely flat, but then when you pop it open, it has this box. That's what you want, okay? From here, our mechanism is ready to be installed. So I have the corner with the tape on it, and I'm gonna flip that so the tape is on the bottom. And I am gonna line up that corner just to the left of the score line, and then I'll fold on the bottom triangle score line. I can press the box flat. That's what I'm looking for, okay? So here I am. I'm going to remove that backer paper. I'm going to flip this over. So the triangle is sort of pointing at that center score line, and I'm going to put mine all the way up at the top of my card, but you can put it anywhere on that score line. That's just fine. And then I'm going to fold this flat so that the top small box is facing me. I'll remove that backer paper. And then I'm going to fold the back of the card on top of it. So I know that this is going to fold flat and fit in an envelope. That's it. The only thing left to do is to add my sentiment. So I am just fitting that like a puzzle piece into the hole in the front of our card. And then I will remove that last piece of release tape and fold that flat on top of it. And now my sentiment is on the box. And when it opens up, you guys, it's a huge pop. It's really big and kind of in the middle of the card. I love this so much. So I am just going to use my little like pressure tool to hold that closed and put everything else together. I decided to trim away the white outline just from inside the collar because I felt like I was missing too much of his neck. This was not hard at all. If I were Mary, I wouldn't use the dies. She likes fussy cutting and I am just a nightmare at it. But the outside lines on all her images are really thick, and that makes them super easy to fussy cut. So if there were a time to do it, I would do it here. I did decide I wanted to round the corner on just one part of the collar because it was overlapping his face a little bit. But again, if I had just taken the time to like line it up and see what it looked like, it wouldn't have been so weird and awkward. So I'm adding my little guy. We'll just call him Steven. We'll add Steven onto the bottom left of the card. Watch me be wrong. I will delight in it. It'll be great. And then my little popcorn bowl has just a touch of foam tape on the right-hand side to pop it up. I was pretty much done and I decided I really wanted something outlining the hole in my card, but his head covers a corner of it. So I'm going to hold it in place and trim away, not exactly, but nearly as much as I need. Then I'll add a little bit of glue to the outside. I cut this just by nesting two dies together, so it's really thin, like 1/8 of an inch. I'm gonna tap it on the back of my hand to remove any excess glue. And then I'm gonna start in the corner farthest away from our guy. I'm gonna line it up using my fingers to just press against the inside of that square. And then I can tuck just those tiny little extra bits behind his head. It wasn't glued all the way to the edge. And that has never been such a benefit to me as it was here. But here is card number 2. You guys, I love that one. For this last card, we're going to use the pattern paper that came in today's kit and the twist flower pop-up from Katherine. I have to tell you, this pattern paper was the first thing I made when I started putting together a masculine card kit back in November. And at the time, I thought it was going to be a mini kit, but then my brain just couldn't quit thinking about all the extra things I could add. And so that's why we had a really big kit and add-ons this February. And we will have another follow-up masculine card kit later this year, a bunch of which is already done. I've had so much fun with this. And I think a lot of us think about masculine cards as being very challenging. But once I sort of did my deep dive, and you can go back through the month and kind of see what I've made, I just have been really inspired. So the direct measurements for this card come from Call Me Crafty Al's Sheetload of Cards in November 2024. So I will just link to her video where she debuts this card sketch. It's part of her free printable series. And what I love about it is that if you're working from like 12 by 12 or 6 by 6, kind of depending on the month, you can make a bunch, a sheetload of cards all with the same sketch, and she gives you the measurements to make the most out of your paper. But I'm just making one today. As I'm lining up my gray strips on my silver cardstock, I like to do the outsides first with matching sort of margins around the outside, and then do the middle piece last so I can make sure that I get it centered and I don't have wonky margins. Then I put some foam tape all over the back of this circle, and I tell you what, you guys, I wish it was farther to the right, but I tried to get it off and I could not. Even with my heat tool, I couldn't loosen up that adhesive enough because I'm an over adheser. So it is what it is. I would put it further to the right. Then I used a 2.5-inch circle to cut out World's Okayest Engineer, and I'll add that with some removable adhesive. So there's the front of the card, and you certainly could do just the front. And here's the mechanism that we're installing. It's so simple. So there's a ton of stuff in here, but we really just need the one piece for the mechanism, and this is it. So I'm going to do my best to show you the score lines here. There is an X in the middle. It goes right through the hole in the center, and then there is sort of a vertical score line down the center. So I am going to fold a mountain fold through that vertical score line. Then I'm going to valley fold the X, and I'm just sticking my thumb in there. I'm going carefully. I want to make sure that I'm creasing everything nicely. This whole thing sort of folds up into a little bundle of paper, and so if you use your bone folder, it'll fold flatter into your card. And then it folds like this. Okay, so I'm going to show you again. Here it is. I have these sort of legs sticking out, and I just use my fingers to poke into the valleys. I'm going to measure down into my card about 2 inches. I'm going to flatten the whole thing, and I'm going to just put a pencil mark on the back of the 2 biggest pieces. That's where I'm going to add my glue. So instead of folding it up like this so that those valleys tuck into the middle, I'm actually just going to fold it in half, like all the way in half, because I can get it into the middle a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to add glue to one of those sides and then the other side. And there's a hole in the middle of the mechanism so that I can look through it and see the dot that I made. And I am going to close my card as I'm pressing this into that fold. I am lining up that center score line on my mechanism with the center score line on the card. When I go to fold, those little legs are going to try to poke out towards the side of the card. That's what we want. If they aren't doing that on their own, you can use your fingers and gently sort of tuck them back into place, because we want those legs to attach to each other. There are 2 sets of score lines on this top one, and I'm going to fold them both in towards the center of the mechanism. You can see I have a little tab right here. And on the bottom, I have just 1 score line. So that leg is going to get glued to that little bitty tabby on the top leg. Okay, depending on how you install yours, your tabby might be on the bottom. It doesn't really matter. Okay, but here you can see I'm creating a sort of pyramid kind of at the top of that mechanism. And when I fold my card, it will sort of twist and lay flat. I like to do this, open and close it a couple of times, press it well, make sure my glue is dry before I try and add anything to it. Then I'm going to add my sentiment right there, just onto one of those sections. Okay, I don't want to go over a score line with some kind of glue, or I will glue it shut, or I will glue it so it doesn't fold flat. No bueno. I used my 2.5-inch circle to cut out Is It Weird Being the Same Age as Old People, and I put it on a 2.5-inch circle, and then I'll add glue onto that pencil line. Okay, we're only putting it in that one section of our mechanism. I'm going to fold this just a little bit while I add this on there so I can kind of see my angles, making sure everything fits. It's going to fit just fine, but if you went any bigger than this 2.5-inch navy circle, you might have problems. And then I will press that on there by tucking my fingers behind it. I'm going to fold it closed very gently while the glue is wet and make sure it's not going to catch again any bigger and you might have a catch point. But this is it. It folds up tight. It pops and twists open. I think that the action on this when you open it up is so wonderful and surprising. And it's a really easy mechanism to install. You can put anything on there. And then I can add my front panel onto my card. And I've got my 2 sentiments. World's okayest engineer. Is it weird being the same age as old people? Oh, you guys. So I asked you guys to vote on what supplies I should use for an upcoming live. And most people voted to use another Karen Berniston pop-up. So check that out on Saturday. I'll talk more about it here in just a minute. All right, my friends, those are our 3 cards for today. I would love to know which of these 3 is your favorite. And if you were going to make this card, would you use just the layout or would you add the pop-up on the inside as well? If you're interested in the free printable kit, all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. Then click on More or Show More to unpack the description box beneath the video. There you'll find a link to the original kits and their videos, along with a link to my Patreon where you can download the larger format sentiments and that pattern paper. Be sure to come back on Saturday. I'll be live streaming with LV Handcrafted, Lauren TaylorMade, and Carrie Rhodes. We are using our stash and trying to make the most of the supplies that we already have. Then next Wednesday, I'll have another add-on kit for you. And on Friday, I'll have a surprise spring kit, one of the big ones, to share with everybody. Thank you all so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.